everyone, how's it going? So I've always been asked, what is it like to learn Japanese and what is a good way to kind of start learning the basics before either coming over here for a trip, maybe doing a study abroad program, or maybe even potentially wanting to live over here. And so I thought I would use this video to kind of just show you my tips and tricks and how to, start learning a new language.
Tallen. Tallen, look, I like you and all, but I don't need help learning Japanese. I already know Japanese, so I can go to Japan and have fun. You know what I mean? I'm good.
Ah, Toonrami, I see. All right. So what did you do? Did you take some audio classes? Did you, get a, language partner? Did you take a class or anything?
Class? No. No class. No books. I watched anime, dude.
Ah, I see. Anime. All right. Do you mind if I ask you a question then?
Dude, go for it. Ask me anything.
All right. How about this? Please translate for me. Excuse me. Do you know where the bathroom is?
Oh, that's child's play. See this. Here we go. This watch. All right, just check it out. Oi nani o suru bako yaro?
I see. Okay. How about this one? Oh, that's really cool.
Oh, I got this. Subarashi.
I see. All right. This is very easy, I think, if you've learned so much Japanese, of course. Thank you so much for the help.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
All right. Nailed it. Yeah. I love the tune. I love the tune to it. Look, I hate to burst your bubble, man. It's again, I've stated before that using things like anime is a very good way to maybe learn some grammar, learn some vocab and everything, but that's not how people generally talk over here. So I still think you need to start looking at maybe some grammar books or maybe getting a language partner or just learning some daily vocab and kanji. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into some tips and tricks. And you might even be able to come live over here in Japan in the future. Hey everyone, what's going on? Tallen back here, and today I wanted to talk about what steps someone can take to start learning Japanese. And when I thought to myself originally, I'm like, okay, why did I learn Japanese in the first place, right? What was it that clicked in my brain? I was like, you know what? Let's learn some Japanese. Let's not learn German. Let's focus on this, right? And I looked back and I said, well, you know what? A lot of it comes from just the environment I grew up in. I grew up watching a lot of anime with my friends when I was doing homework. I played a ton of video games. There's the Nintendo headquarters is actually from my home city, so that kind of played a part in it. I was really big into technology and everything and games, and I was just like, you know what? I would think this would be kind of cool. Plus, it was kind of a requirement to get into university from high school, and I was like, well, you know what? Why not? Let's go ahead and try this. Let's try learning Japanese as a new language, and lo and behold, it was actually a lot of fun. Now, as a kind of a side note, I was actually granted the opportunity to come over to Japan in high school for about 2 weeks or so. And I remember the first time when, after I got out of the airport and we got onto the train, we actually got into the city of Tokyo and just seeing everything around me and all of the billboards and neon signs and everything with all the kanji. And granted, because we were in Tokyo, there definitely was a lot of English, and there still is to this day. And I will say that if you're simply someone who just wants to come over to Japan for some traveling, but you maybe not have the time to learn Japanese, you don't actually technically need it. Yeah, it's going to help you a lot and everything, but I think if you are simply trying to just do a one trip to Tokyo for a couple of days and that's it, you don't really need to learn any Japanese. But that's not why we're here, right? We're talking about what's a good way to start learning Japanese. So going back to my trip in high school, though, when I got here, I was just like, Wow, there's a lot of kanji. I really don't know. I mean, because granted, there's thousands upon thousands of characters in kanji and everything. And I was just like, yeah, I've got a ways to go, regardless after living here for 6 years now and studying for 7 back in university and everything. But one thing I will always be thankful for when I originally came over was the fact that I did know some basic Japanese, right? And it made things very easy, like asking where the bathroom was, going into a restaurant, going into even something as simple as McDonald's. The one time I did go into McDonald's when I was still in high school, asking someone for directions, reading a map or anything like that, or at least recognizing maybe a name or something, because a lot of things that are in English here, they're actually in Romaji. And so being able to read it and to be like, okay, hang on, that's Japanese, that's not English, and be like, oh, I can imagine what that is in my head in Japanese, like in kanji or in hiragana or in katakana, and makes it easier to potentially find, whether it be a place, a restaurant, a person or something, anything like that, right? Or a landmark. And so that was definitely something I was very glad to know when I came over here for the very first time. And even into the future, when I came over here kind of for a makeshift study abroad with some family that lives over here. And then when I moved over here 6 years ago at the time of this recording. So that definitely really helped. One thing that I learned though, when I got into university, was that my high school didn't prepare me for much, but it still did prepare me. But one thing I wish my high school had used though was an actual textbook. Back in high school, we had these kind of like little textbooks and everything, but there wasn't like a center goal or focus or anything. And so when I got into university, they handed me this book, and it was this book right here, Genki. And a lot of you have probably seen this on Amazon. It's a little expensive, but you can get it on like Kindle. You can buy it from Amazon. You can probably download it from somewhere. I'm not really sure where, but it's a very good, in my opinion, one of the best ways to start learning Japanese and kind of see how it goes. And I want to read a quote to you guys right now as you're kind of looking at some of the footage I have up on screen of just different ways that you might see, even though you might see some English in these clips, but also just simply, what you could potentially witness for yourself, whether you're in Tokyo or other parts of Japan. So the way that they kind of describe the Japanese writing system in here is that there are three kinds of characters in Japanese: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. All three characters can be seen in a single sentence sometimes, okay? Hiragana and katakana, like the alphabet, represent sounds. As you can see in an example sentence, hiragana has a roundish shape and is used for conjunction endings, function words, and native Japanese words not covered by kanji. Katakana, which is rather straight lines, is normally used for writing loan words and foreign names. For example, the Japanese word for television is written in katakana as terebi. Kanji or Chinese characters represent not just sounds, but also meanings. Mostly, kanji are used for nouns and the stems of verbs and adjectives. Now, obviously, that's a very textbook definition of what Japanese can be. And a lot of people, including myself, I forget that stuff sometimes. I really do. Sometimes when I go back into these beginner books, or what I would classify as a beginner book, I still look at it to this day and I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's a way to describe it essentially, right? So again, there are tons of different ways that you can go and learn something. Most people will tell you that there has to be a finite way of starting to learn Japanese. And then from there, it's just studying kanji essentially, right? You're writing kanji every single day, like 10 kanji a day. You take a self-test at the end of the week, and you just keep on going, and you eventually take the proficiency test, and then you're good to go, right? Others are going to tell you that no. What you need to do is you need to just get out of your home country. You need to go study abroad. You need to immerse yourself in the culture, and you need to do nothing but just hardcore studying in day out, and just keep going like that. And I don't think neither of those are wrong, actually. I think depending on what type of learner you are, that is definitely something you can do. Me, myself, personally, again, I learned in the classroom, but I think I learned a little bit differently than I think most people do. For one thing, when I was in high school, my teacher was not a native Japanese speaker, actually. It was an American woman, and she was a very good teacher, but she had lived abroad in Japan for like 2 or 3 years. And then when I got into university, then that's when I had the native Japanese teachers who had come over here from Japan, years ago, and they taught me. But what was interesting was that in high school, I actually learned katakana first, okay? So up on the screen right now, you're seeing both the katakana and hiragana tables, okay? These are the very, very basics of Japanese that no matter who you talk to, this is what you need to start learning and memorizing. And naturally, these are actually fairly easy, I would say, unless maybe memorizing is not your best strength. But if you can't memorize these or you don't want to learn these, you're going to be in a bit of a tough spot. Hiragana and Katakana is the main thing you need to start learning at the very beginning when it comes to learning Japanese. Okay. So most people, and I think most, here in Japan, whether it's elementary kids or students who are doing study abroad programs, or even at my own university, everyone learns Hiragana, then Katakana first. That's just the way it's been done. There are many different reasons as to why. But what was interesting for me personally, at least, and I don't know if this necessarily helped or anything, but I just noticed it essentially, was in high school, I learned Katakana first, and then I learned Hiragana. And I think the main reason people, at least from what I've picked up, and again, there are many different reasons, that you want to learn Hiragana first is because then you're not thinking that, oh, Katakana, because it's mostly used for like foreign words and, non-Japanese words, everything is, we said that way, right? Like, for example, TV or television is terebi. So, that must mean like all Japanese is just going to be some kind of like English Japanese combo word essentially. And that's all it's going to be, right? Which is not the case at all, right? So, but anyway, in high school, I learned Katakana and then I learned Hiragana and then obviously grammar and kanji and all that other stuff. Whereas when I went into university, I actually went back into the 101 class just to kind of pick up on some stuff because I'm like, I learned a lot in high school, but it didn't prepare me, I think, for the university level essentially. And so when I went into the 101 class, while yes, it was easy for me because again, I had taken that stuff already, they started with Hiragana and then Katakana. And I noticed a lot of my fellow classmates were having trouble with Katakana because they had just learned Hiragana and then they were going into Katakana, which luckily enough is the same sounds. Like for example, you say ah and ah in both Hiragana and Katakana, but it obviously looks different. One's more round, one's more edged. But Hiragana was kind of the quote unquote more important one for my sensei back in the day when I was in university. And so again, I don't know if that's just somebody because, I found Katakana and Hiragana both very easy to remember. And I still remember those to this day. I'm not sure if it was because of the order I learned it in. Maybe it was just because they were easy for me. I'm not really sure. But if you're somebody who is going to start learning Japanese from today or maybe tomorrow, try it out. Maybe if Hiragana might be a little difficult for you, try going to Katakana first. I'm not saying you have to stick to the exact thing that I did or that a lot of other people will say, but sometimes it does work for you. Now, the one thing I do really love, again, about this Genki book, and I like I said at the beginning, I am going to be referencing this quite a bit, was that it had a very nice structure to how one can just start to kind of learn basic Japanese. This book is not going to make you fluent, okay? There are two books, by the way. There's Genki 1 and then there's Genki 2. And then there's also a kanji book that goes with it and then a workbook that you can go with it. And in college, that's what I use essentially. But what's really nice about the Genki format, I should say, is that after you learn Hiragana and Katakana, each chapter is broken up into parts. You start with your page of vocab to start learning all the new vocab words and everything, because obviously, just like in your native tongue or native language, there is a ton of stuff to basically relearn, right? You may know how to say complex sentences and everything in your own language, but again, this is a brand new language for you. So you're gonna have to start with the basics, right? I like dogs. I want to eat this. I want to nani, whatever the case is, right? So in each chapter of this book, it starts with vocab, then it goes into the main 1 or 2 grammar points. Usually, sometimes it will hit 2, maybe even 3, but usually 1 or 2. Some grammar points and some sentences on how to use them. And then it goes into some practice sentences for you to go through. And then it's kind of a final conversation. And then it goes on to the next section. And as you progress, you then get into even more things where, I think it's by chapter 3 or so, you start to learn verbs and tenses and kind of, I guess, the polite way to say something compared to a more casual way, or even something that's a very polite way / business way, the more and more you go. So for example, a simple word like to eat, the main verb, the main way to say it is taberu. But if you want to say that as more of a polite way, if you're speaking to someone maybe that you don't know, or someone has a higher status than you, you might say tabemasu, or you might say tabemashita, which is past, like I ate it, but it's still a polite tense. Or more casual past tense could be tabeta. And actually, I found myself going more and more casual as I've lived here in Japan, and I can kind of get away with it because I'm a foreigner, but that's besides the point. You definitely want to learn both casual and polite conversation and words and conjugations and everything when it comes to learning Japanese, particularly because here in Japan, that's very important to know, right? You don't want to go up to your boss, and yeah, I think this is almost normal in every country, but you don't want to go up to your boss and be like, yo, bro, what's up, in Japanese, and everyone's gonna be like, did he just say that? Like, what's this guy doing here? So you don't obviously want to do that kind of thing, but just note that there's a lot of different tenses and everything that you want to be able to learn when it comes to Japanese. Now, let's say you're somebody who maybe you're not able to pick up any books yet and you're just simply trying to learn a little bit from maybe like this particular video, or you're just Googling, YouTube videos on how to learn basic Japanese, which is a good way to start. Again, we covered katakana and hiragana. And then from there, what I would start to kind of force yourself to learn a little bit is some vocab. And I'm not just meaning just go out and just open up a dictionary and start looking at vocab. I would start looking at things like numbers. I would start looking at verbs, foods, kind of very basic items that you use in your everyday life, and make a list of what those are. Just the simple format of them, right? Like, you don't need to go like super polite, past tense, negative, versions of those verbs or adjectives or anything like that, right? And then from there, you can start going into very, very easy sentences and grammar points saying like, I am something, you are something, right? And I should be having those up on the screen right here for you, so you can go and take a look at those as a very basic way of looking at those. But that would be a very good kind of second point to go for after memorizing and really being saying like, you know what, I know hiragana and I know katakana. Going with that, right? Because again, there's multiple different grammar points when it comes to learning Japanese, but just start with the basics, right? X, wa, y, des. Okay, and I'll be using des for probably the next few videos if this takes off and you guys want me to make more of these. But that's a very good way to kind of, test yourself, I would say, in terms of, your hiragana, your katakana, you've learned some vocab now. Let's make a sentence. Let's start making a sentence, okay? And then from there, you can start to look at turning those into questions, okay? So for example, if you say something like, watashi wa Bob desu, okay? My name is Bob. By the way, my name's not Bob. Again, that's a very simple sentence right there. My name is Bob, okay? Or I am Bob, depending on if you put in the my in there or anything. But then you can turn it into a question, be like, anata wa Bob desu ka? Adding ka to the end of a sentence usually, or sometimes in the way that you pronounce something, and if you make it sound like a question, that is how questions are done here. You're not always going to see a sentence with ka at the end of it. I mean, half the time I will just say like, nani o tabe ka? That used ka right there. Or I can say, nani o taberu? Right? The emphasis that I put in the way that I say the word can be, when someone hears it, like, oh, he's asking a question, right? And then, again, that can be true in almost any language, but that's something I definitely picked up when learning Japanese, both in high school and university, and especially when I came over here and I started meeting a lot more Japanese friends and just locals. And I was just like, oh, I don't need to keep adding ka to the end of everything. I sound like one of the biggest noobs ever when it comes to speaking and everything. And so someone literally tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, you don't need to add ka to the end of everything. I was like, thank you very much for knowing that. So that's just something to know right there. And then they kind of wrap this up in terms of, again, just something basic to start off. So we've covered hiragana, we've covered katakana, we've covered basic grammar and vocab stuff to start learning. Then the final thing to do is to start learning kanji. Okay, now kanji is the big devil, as everyone always puts it. You're like, oh man, I don't want to learn kanji. I've heard horror stories about it and everything. And I will say, to an extent, there is obviously a lot of difficult kanji to learn. I still learn a ton of it, but a lot of it it's not as bad as it looks. So what I would start with in terms of absolute kanji to know, I think a lot of people will, find pretty easy to learn, is learning numbers. I say 1 through 10 in terms of numbers, 100, 1,000, 10,000 yen in terms of money. Learn those kanji. And then start to learn the days of the week, okay? And I know the days of the week might sound weird, but those kanji will come back, and into the future, you'll start seeing those more and more. For example, you might see a particular day kanji, one of the days of the week actually, is used in a very common word that you'll see, or a sign you'll see around, bank or ginko. So sometimes learning a very simple kanji on for one word, or how it's attached or combined with other kanji to make one word, can work out very well for you when you're good. Then walking down the street and you're like, I don't know that full kanji, but I do know that, and I kind of know that, so that must make it something like this. And that's how that's honestly very helpful when it comes to traveling in Japan, getting around in Tokyo or other cities and other areas and everything, where maybe you don't know everything, but by learning these very basic first steps, you can look at it and go, I kind of get that. Because I know this, this, and this, I can kind of, make it up in my head, and I'm good to go essentially. And I know where I need to go. I know who I need to meet or something like that. So those would be the steps I would say are the best way to start learning Japanese. And again, if, like I stated before, if you guys want me to start doing more of these, kind of like a next step, and what I personally think is the next good step in order to start learning, that is something I would say. Like maybe I can go into more detail about kanji, how personally I like to unfortunately study it sometimes, or how I might look at it when I'm riding the train or something like that. So, and again, if using a book doesn't help you, there are tons of audio options out there and everything. You can find YouTube videos and everything besides this, obviously. But again, I think the basics you're going to find, no matter who you go to, are going to tell you hiragana, katakana. Start learning some very basic grammar. Look up some words in the dictionary or online or anything, and just make a list of some basic words that you use all the time personally in yourself, and then start to learn those basic kanji I just talked about, with numbers, days of the week, and maybe even some simple verbs if you want to push yourself a little bit. So, but anyway, guys, that's basically gonna be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Have you ever started learning Japanese beforehand? Have you learned it in the past and you want to pick it up again? Do you use a book? Are you more of a visual learner, an audio learner, all that kind of stuff? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and let's get a conversation going. And if I missed anything you think that is very important, again, let me know down in the comments, and we'll let everyone know. Let's help each other, right? It's always fun to kind of do this stuff. So anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for the video. Until next time, everyone, I will see you all in the next one. Gane.